sometimes you get so busy working in the business, you don't have time to work on the business. And if it's not something that is, effective, productive, or if it's not going to get you the result you want, then just cut bait.
Well, welcome. We have Chuck Burton here with the Burton team of the Investment Planning Council, where you guys actually run a team and are voted as the #1 financial planning team in the Aurelia market for how many? Over 8 years now.
Yeah, over the last 20 years, it's probably about 11 times. Not the past year though, but definitely over the last 20 years, but about 11 times there.
Yeah, well, congrats on that and your success. And running a team, that's something that I want to get into and how you guys have that team concept. Yeah. But I want to go back to the very beginning. So when you and your father, you guys started the company, but take us through that early story, because there's a story there at the very beginning, and then there's that early struggle, because you were able to come on, partner with your father, and then you guys were able to grow it to something that's really phenomenal for your clients. But let's go back to the beginning, and maybe you could share a little bit of a background there.
Well, my dad has always been a pretty entrepreneurial guy that he didn't have much growing up, so he always took it on himself to kind of learn financial industry. And even though he wasn't in that right from the get-go, but then back in the early 90s, he decided to actually take his passion that he did on the side of learning for himself to actually running to work with clients and that. And so it was back in about 91, 92, I believe, there that he started him on his own with a dealership there. And myself, at that time, I was just finishing up high school, going to college, and at that time, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And but any of the jobs that I had for kind of summer jobs were always in the customer service type of fields. And I kind of looked at my dad, thought, he seemed to be enjoying what he did. And I thought, well, I'd try my hand at that. So Humber College at the time had a program that was apparently only offered about 3 places in Canada from the Institute of Canadian Bankers. And so I applied for that. They had some kind of entry-level tests and stuff, interviews that you had to take. And I got accepted and, went through that course, had all licensed up. And when I was done, I worked at a local bank there up in Aurelia. And it was good. I didn't like the corporate culture of working at a bank. And I was kind of, I guess, blessed in a way that my dad, he was, again, very entrepreneurial-like, that he liked, himself bettering himself and going to some of these conferences. And during college, I remember he took me to one of these kind of top performer conferences there. And it was just a total different way of looking at things, that instead of just being a job, like people really looking at it from a business perspective there. And I guess that's kind of what jaded me, I guess, maybe working at the bank, is that it's just like, it was like they just kind of told you what to do. And if they had to ask the person for a visa, if they to apply for a visa, even though they might not needed it, and there's just things like that. It's like, does that really have the customer's interest in mind? And I was there for about 2 years. I started on my birthday, and it was coming up to my birthday there a couple of years later, and we were sitting around the family barbecue, and my dad was saying, well, what are you doing at work? And I said, well, I'm switching jobs within the bank. I was going to work in berries. Well, why are you doing that? And I said, well, they weren't really looking to, they had lots of established advisors there already. So I was looking to get kind of a lateral move and work in the berry. And it's just like, well, he goes, one of the days I really need a guy like you working with me. And we kind of had that conversation a few times over the years.
You guys both have similar skill sets, and you guys have just been divide and conquer. Like, how's that been?
A lot of similar things, just from an entrepreneurial standpoint there, because I always joke that I don't know who'd want to hire me, so that's why part of being an entrepreneur. Yeah, that you just you fired yourself. But he was never very much into technology, so I've always been known to be a bit of a techie person there. So just kind of integrating the technology, and especially it's night and day difference from the late 90s when I started with tech. Right now, that computers were just kind of there to help you a bit, where now was if you didn't have a computer, that you wouldn't be able to hardly do anything.
Love that. Well, I took a couple of things out of that. Your father asking, like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you going into that other field? And it's such a great question that entrepreneurs can and really should be asking. I remember when I got into, before I got into real estate, my wife said to me, Mark, you don't have to keep playing hockey if you don't want it.
Yeah.
This is way back in 2007. And it sometimes you need to have a conversation with wise counsel and to be able to give you ideas or new thoughts that maybe you wouldn't have come up on your own.
Yeah.
And that, why is such a really great question going into any new business and making that selection. So that was really smart. And then, the idea there that you guys are, you're complementary, you guys both have the same values, and then that you were able to take the technology side of it and add that to the business going in and with any sort of partnership selection. I really think that that's really important. One, that there's a culture fit.
Yes.
Obviously, you and your father knew each other really well, and you guys were aligned that way. But then how you were able to take another skill set and added that to the business, and you guys can go further, faster, if that makes sense, right? So that's great. Now that early struggle phase, because you would have been in the financial industry, but there's still that early growing pain. Can you recall or are there any, let's just say, any advice to entrepreneurs that they're getting going and they're going through that early struggle that, maybe to give them hope or advice or any counsel on how you can go from, just, yourself up into now you have 12 team members. So you're running a team, but you're pretty decent business because business size.
Yeah.
So it's not just yourself that you're managing, but to go from yourself, just kind of scale up, maybe any advice that you can give.
Well, I think it's once you start to get that critical mass and you know that you're consistent. So you like to call it a process, but sometimes people in the beginning stage, they're not sure, what do you mean process? They do stuff and it works and they just keep repeating it, rinse and repeat. They keep doing it. But it is a process a person starts, whether it's formally down or if it's just something that's in your mind. And I think that, if you have a process that has been working, that's when you kind of, for lack of better words, kind of have to bet on yourself and say, well, that, if I invest in myself, and even though they might think I have to stretch a little bit, but that if you keep doing the process that you're doing, getting people to have the same values of you, it's going to work. 'Cause just like with Ted, that conversations, because it had been mentioned a few times over those 2 years after I was done college about, maybe someday working with them. And I was really never kind of banking on that. Not that I didn't want to work with them. It was just that it's kind of, I'm doing this, that it wouldn't be cool to work with that. Great. But, I'm kind of carving my own way. But for him to kind of, as an entrepreneur, think to himself, well, what, he's probably going to have to kind of carry me a little bit, potentially in the first little bit, just till I get kind of off and running myself. And I'm sure the same kind of trepidation when you first hired Grace, that, it's beyond just yourself. You're like, okay, I'm get somebody else that's dependent on me to work there. And in the beginning for Ted to say, okay, that, he got no business just yet, but he's like, he knows that, I'm going to help grow his business and start to grow my own business there. And so it's just taking that leap of faith of saying, hey, that, even though you can't necessarily guarantee it's going to be a success, but all the markers leading up to it says that there should be success in the zone.
I like that. Betting on yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That, and that's where really what business is anytime you're starting something. Yeah. You got to look at, what's the likelihood of this actually being successful? And then ultimately you are making a bet, but
that's right.
You hope that it's an educated decision versus like going to the the casino and kind of throwing the dice. And I think that's one of the things that I love most about business is that, if it's to be, it's up to me. It's sort of approach, right? Whatever you put into it, you'll get out of it.
That's right.
Very cool. What would be a misconception? You're in the financial industry there. What would be like an overall misconception that maybe your industry has that maybe you can debunk, or maybe we'll just say some misalignment and truths that maybe some clients come in that maybe you're able to correct them on?
Well, I think even just for people, sometimes just the needing a financial advisor in the first place, that sometimes people think, well, you have to have a lot of money to do this, or a really complicated financial life, and that's not always the case. That sometimes, it's one of the things that we really pride ourselves in is that we're very multi-generational. Our motto is we help families build, protect, and transfer wealth. And so and being an entrepreneur, being any type of business, run your business any type of way, not disparaging like banks or any other advisors that do it, but some are just strictly their elephant hunting. They want to get the biggest clients that they can all the time. And well, don't get me wrong, it's nice to have some big clients, but also too, and it's kind of my dad kind of growing up in a rural area on farms, and that it's kind of the farmer mentality. I was never grown up on a farm, but learned for my parents is just kind of like there's a time to plant, and there's a time to grow, and there's time to harvest. And just looking at your business as well there too, that we're not just here to be, I'm here for 10 years now, we're here for a long time. Right. And so it's really important for us to say, hey, Classroom can help now. Can we help the previous generation? Can we help the next generation? And that we don't necessarily look at, you have to have so much to deal with this. It's like, if you're part of a larger family, so we're willing to take the younger clients there too, because they need a little bit of stewardship and guidance there with their finances too. And some advisors, they don't care. They're just like, we'll just deal with mom and dad for now. And when, if something happens or the kids get a little bit bigger, we'll help you down the road. Where it's important for us that, we have those relationships with multi-generations. Like at one point with a couple of our families, we had 5 generations of people for great-grandmother to great-grandchild getting their first RESP. And it's just really important. But from their standpoint, because I don't know, I'm sure you find it the same in your business too, that it could be in any order, but the 5 things with people, it's their faith, family, friends, their wealth, and their health. That's the 5 most important things to all people. Yeah. It could be in different orders, that type of thing. Love that. And especially with families and that too, that it's that is why you're doing this, where it's your legacy to help yourself to go, but also I know for myself, wanting to help my own family and just with our clients and that too, with their family, that because it's not always about, we'll wait to see what we get in our estates, my dad has a saying that he goes, it's nice to help people to be able to help with their families from a warm hand instead of a cold hand. And that's part of when we do sit down with these plannings with clients, especially if we are dealing with multi-generations, we can kind of help the different generations, and we kind of know the overarching theme that, again, for privacy, but maybe little Bobby doesn't know what you wouldn't want grandma and grandpa know what they're doing, and vice versa, but we kind of know the story, so we can kind of help at least, guide them, so that way their plans and everything match up.
Love that. Yeah, no, and that's thinking the long term. And I also like your analogy about the planting, the reaping, the planting and sowing and reaping, right? Yeah. And I think that long term perspective in business is really at the heart of any successful. Mm-hmm. Because hunting on a day-to-day basis, it's exciting, but at the same time, you don't want to be doing that your whole business. Yeah. You should have X amount of repeat clients that keep coming back, and then they're referring as well, where you have that more of that farmer mindset. So that's so important. That's really good. And I know for us, first-time home buyers, before they're ready, we say the same thing on the brokerage business, come early, and then, it may be a year from now, but we'll get you on the right plan to be able to eventually buy. And then on the investment firm, for us, even if you're not quite at that level where you can hit the minimum for investment, let's have the conversation, because we know you're on the trajectory to be there. It's just not quite right now, but at least you'll have a plan that way. That's right. So I love that. I love that mindset there. Running a business, you make a lot of hard decisions. There's thousands of decisions that need to be made. How do you go about your decision-making process? Are there any values that you filter through while making your decisions, or is there anything that maybe you do to be able to increase the quality of your decisions in business?
Well, I'd say it really comes down at the end of the day is what's good for the client. Mm-hmm. That is the core to, if it's not good for the client, it's why are we doing it? That's the whole reason why we're in business, is to help service that client to achieve their financial goals that they want. And obviously at the end of the day, because we're entrepreneurs, we're business owners, it has to be obviously profitable. We can't go around doing things that's just going to be wasting money and not profitable. But at the same token, that if you don't have that client first mentality,
Right.
that the rest doesn't really work out or doesn't work out long term. So that is, to me, that's it has to be what's good for the client.
In business, it seems like so simple, right? It's like, but when you got a decision, maybe there's $100,000 sitting on the table, what's best for me or what's best for the client. That's where you really got to, keep top of mind that 100,000 is not worth your reputation. The reputation is actually the goal. It's not the money. And if you focus on the reputation and making the right decisions, I love that filter, what's best for the client, the money will always be there as a byproduct.
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah.
That you can make. I'm sure there's ways to make really fast buck in our industry there, but unless you're not planning to be in the business that long, you're better just to kind of take that step back and say what's the best for the client and go from there.
Love that. There was this one time when we had a error. There was an offer that came in, and we'll just say it went back out, and we'll just say that there was an error there. Yeah. And so what ended up happening was we were selling a lot, and then the buyer actually, there was a misunderstanding of what the buyer was actually buying, what the seller was buying.
Yeah.
Because there's a severance involved, and one thing led to another, and ultimately it came down to there was a $40,000 gap. And the client came to me and said, "Hey, Mark, listen, we trusted you to look after us, and ultimately, there's a $40,000 gap." Now, what was interesting is by the time this all kind of panned out, the market had gone up, and he was up 100,000. Yeah. But there was still a 40,000 gap at the beginning, and he said that to me, and it's like, you're 100% right. And so I didn't make a decision at that point. Do I, kind of sweep it under the rug and move forward, or do I get the checkbook out? And so we ended up writing a $40,000 check.
Oh, wow.
And I'll just say that, Chuck, I had one of the best lessons ever. I'm going to remember that always, and the company did as well. And so we put, systems in place to make sure it doesn't happen again. But that was just a really good core kind of, filter at that point. And that's where sometimes you got to make the decision based on, fixing your problems and owning your stuff, knowing that the reputation is the goal, but it's hard to do, right? And so you've obviously done that, being in business for as long as you have. And so that's really good point. Can you share failures? That's another thing that business owners need to deal with on an ongoing basis. Can you share maybe a failure that you've had along the way? Business owners, we all have them, right? And so it's how you deal with it. But I'm curious if there was, maybe you could share a failure that you experienced in the past, and then how you were able to overcome it.
If I was thinking about that earlier, that's one thing we've never really had any huge failures. That I would say our biggest challenge that we've had is just, and I know a lot of business owners like that these days, is hiring new personnel. So we were kind of in a weird situation over the years, is that we didn't really intentionally hire a lot of people. So as we grew our business, we had an advisor that we bought their practice, and they had a great assistant that was working with them. And as they were exiting, we're like, your assistant's awesome, they're fantastic. Let's, would you like to stay on with us? Great, okay. So it was just kind of inherited with the business. So when we as we bought a few practices, we brought some people on there that way, a couple other assistants, and then one of our advisors, that she was a long-time assistant, that she decided in the last about 9 months or so, almost a year now, I guess, that she wanted to become an advisor. So we've been starting working with her to look after some of our existing clients, but also help her to develop her own book of business there as well. But just hiring, so we had this a large amount of employees. But then when COVID hit, it was a combination that COVID hit, but also I was always the baby of our branch. That when I first started that everyone else was 20 years my senior.
Yeah.
Now I'm in the middle of the pack now. But when we were leading up to COVID there, like I had to sit down with my father. I said, kind of talking in financial terms, like we're a 5-year GIC away from like almost half of our staff turning over because they want to retire. That I can't be like the shoemaker with holes in their shoes, right? The people that want to work forever, they want to retire as well.
Yeah.
And so with COVID, it kind of maybe people that might have decided they wanted originally, oh yeah, I've been for another 5 or 6 years. COVID happened. It's like, no, maybe they want to retire a little bit earlier, which is great. So, we had really, I had one assistant that I had hired kind of externally in the at that point, 22 years I've been working, because everyone else we kind of absorbed as we went along. And so from the span of 2022 to 2024, we've hired 7 new people. Over the 20 years leading up to it, I hired 1. So it was just that going, from these people who were ninjas, they could do their work on their sleep, to now we're ramping up knowledge for our staff, and that thankfully we had some pretty good systems in place. Our dealership that we work with, they're very good with training in that as well. So that's been our biggest challenge right now, is that we are seasoned team of advisors. We've been known for 20, 25 years, but now our staff that we have that helps support us, which we can't live or grow without, is now a majority of them are newer to the industry there. So that's been a really big challenge. And we were talking kind of before the meeting about being I was part of Strategic Coach. They went there for some entrepreneurial help. And one of the books that they have is they call Who Not How.
Right.
And that was one of the really big things, that not really ever hiring anyone except for like one assistant there beforehand, that really when we were looking at like who do we want to hire, it's just blanket, is like at the end of the day, we want people that have that curiosity about them, because you can either sit there and tell someone what to do, which I knew from the bank, like I said, I didn't enjoy, or say, here's the result. How do you want to get there? And empower the employee to kind of figure it out. Obviously, give them some processes too. Obviously, we'll always give them guidance, but if they can help maybe figure a different way, because that's not my thing to sit there and do trades and process and stuff, but if they know they can figure out a way how to do it faster and more effectively, hey, go for it. I'm putting the power in your hands to do it. So it's trying to find that type of people. And it's so hard to find people, especially in our industry, direct. So just getting those personalities. So that was my biggest challenge. In the 25 years I've been doing this, was probably the last 4 years, is just staffing to my industry. I'm sure yourself in the real estate, there's lots of real estate seminars and programs, coaching and that. Yeah. But this is strictly for entrepreneurs. And so when we got there, yes, there was a couple other financial services people there too, but people from very diverse backgrounds. A gentleman had a car dealership down around Bowmanville area, to people out west that they had basically a printing business, the labeling. They did stuff for like Pearson Airport, for a lot of the big box stores, for grocery stores and that type of thing, like labelings on meats and that type of thing, to people who had like franchises, like restaurant type franchises and that. So, and just listening to people and their struggle, their opportunities, that they have, and how they dealt with it, but also taking the time to actually carve out your business. Because I don't know about yourself, that you sometimes you get so busy working in the business, you don't have time to work on the business. And so this was kind of when you write that check to Strategic Coach. You're there once a quarter. Also, there's stuff to do in between times, but you're taking the time to sit down once a quarter and to really look at your business. Yeah. Having a person, like in my case, Gary, who can really kind of look from an entrepreneurial standpoint, kind of ask you these questions that maybe you didn't know and that's the biggest thing about learning, is that anyone can learn if you know the right question, but if you don't know the question, how do you know what to look up, right? And so just being able to have that perspective, and really they try to really get you to articulate what the value you're trying to give to your clients or just to your business, what are you trying to achieve, and try to put systems in place to help leverage that.
So good. Work on your business, not as much in the business. And that's something as an entrepreneur, there's not a lot of people that within the organization, everybody's focusing on their role, but they're not focusing on the overarching entity of the business to continue to operate where it's maybe not 100% dependent on you, right? Where you're doing everything. So that's so powerful. Are there any other tips or we'll just say pieces of advice that you implement in your business that you learned from your coach that you implemented in the business?
Like you said, really, like you said, it's just process and like really, when you're making, having a filter on your decision-making filter. Sorry, Gary, the name escapes me just right now, but they have coach have a filtering process that if you say, here's what you want to do, and basically it's kind of almost like a SWOT analysis. What's it going to provide? What's the downside to it? And what will the end goal be? And if it's not something that is effective, productive, or if it's not going to get you the result you want, then just cut bait and move on. Yeah,
love that. Hey, asking great questions. There's another book, The Road Less Stupid, by I believe it's Keith Cunningham.
Okay.
And that was one of the things that he highlights is as the business owner, to be able to sit down with really good questions and have some think time. Right. And so strategic coach Dan Sullivan, who not how, I mean, he's like one of the original, the OG in the business building side. So he has a lot of respect in the industry there. So very cool. I love that. And that you have curiosity to know that you don't know it all. And that you're getting counsel from, a professional outside that this is what they do that can help, grow your business.
Well, that was probably the first lesson I probably learned, because especially working with a parent, working with a father, that when you're growing up, you kind of think you get to that, that early 20s, 25, you kind of think you know everything there. But when you start working with my dad, it's kind of like he's gotten to a certain level. So he knows how to do it. So in the beginning, not to say I wouldn't question him, but it was just that you just kind of accepted, right? Because you're like, and looking at him from a mentor leadership standpoint, because like, no, he's done this. He's gotten here. And then, always ask good questions, but, that you didn't really challenge it necessarily as well, right? Because you knew that, he's done this. And so it's just kind of sitting your ego at the door. And so by doing that, and also one of my heroes is Steve Jobs, and whether he actually did or not, one thing he always said when they look at their Apple products is that when they do something new to it, they say, well, let's rip it up. We're right back to the board. If we're rebuilding it again, what would we do? And sometimes my staff hates me when I do that. But I look at something, if I want to implement something new, it's like, okay, well, what if this was totally from scratch? Let's rip it up and then see how that works. And then when you have that, just say, and there's my existing, how can we kind of mesh it together? Because obviously you don't want to, you've put some money in infrastructure and stuff, you just can't toss it away. But also at the same token, you also have to look further ahead, that if that is something you say, well, you know what, we have to cut bait on this and we have to, move forward. But, but try to kind of get the two to mesh together. And that's kind of my approach to things. Is like when I see something really good, it's like, tear it apart and then say, how can I try to fit that into my practice? And if I can't, what would my practice have to look like to implement that?
Love that. Yeah, one of the things that I'm not a fan on, if I've ever heard it, because both teams, both on Faris team and on Faris Capital, both of them know that saying, well, this is the way that we've always done it.
Yes.
Is it's like, you want to, that's my kryptonite. If I hear that, I'm like, It's like, wait a second, just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean that we always have to keep doing it that way.
And I must say, you mentioned a great thing, and that's the same thing with our opportunity with having to hire all this new staff, is that it's made us do that. Because they ask the question, well, why do you do it?
That's it, Joe.
Oh, we always do it that way. And it's like, huh. And it's just like, so we just kind of made ourselves kind of dig back down. It's just like, well, why did we do that? And re-explore. And some things we've been able to do some other new things. So that's actually something, not necessarily we've just learned, we've always knew that, but it's been come to the forefront in the last few years, is, why did you always do it that way? And so as, again, the who, not how, as they kind of feel their way around and learning, they say, well, what are we doing this way? I'm just like, hey, if that gets us to the result, we get to there faster, do you think it's a better way? That's good. So it has been taking that really a big challenge, and it's become a great opportunity.
Yeah. Well, what would be some of the benefits of a client coming and working with yourself and your team? What would, somebody's deciding where should I, invest? Who should I invest with? Well, them coming over to you, what would be some benefits?
Well, I think it comes down to first that, again, like I said, my dad always has lots of little nuggets of phrases, and and one thing he always says, he goes, no one cares how much you know until you tell them how much they care.
Right.
And I think just when clients, when they sit down in our office, they see that we're pretty very down to earth. It's all about them. That it's not like, oh, this is what you should do. Our conversation is to find out where they are and like what are they looking to do, we're looking to accomplish. How, and then they say, well, this is how we think we can help you there, and having that relationship, and like you said about having multi-generational view that we want to be able to help their whole family. Kind of come back down to those 5 most important things for people there, that they want to make sure they're looked after and their families looked after, because at the end of the day, especially in our business, like what does money mean to you? At the end of the day, that money means so many different things to different people. That's really that's what we try to really define, is what money means to them and how can we help.
Love that. No, that's so good. All right, you ready for a rapid fire section of the talk?
Let's go.
All right. So you're obviously a reader. Yep. If you were to say one book that made the biggest impact, you've given a couple, so that's great. But what would you say if you're going to recommend a book to an entrepreneur getting going? Which book would you recommend?
Well, it's the one I was mentioning before, The E-Myth, and I actually given to a few of my clients. And then over the years, I've been starting out as entrepreneurs. I've bought copies of it to them, and it's just that mindset that getting out of the I'm a technician, and I'm just going to do it myself. And it's like you need to take that step back, and showing that process. To me, that's one of the biggest books that I had influence in my life. That, and I guess the Highly Effective Habits of Successful People there with Covey. That was also a great book there too. Again, overall, that wasn't specifically on financials. That was just that that you have to to develop yourself, constantly go back, sharpen the blade.
Yeah.
That it's a never ending cycle. It's not a destination. It's a journey.
Love it. And it's who we're becoming. That's the goal, right? Love that. 2 great books for 100%.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So,
one last book is of Stephen Covey Jr. His son also had a book there too. Is very good. At the Speed of Trust. Yeah, and then it's all about trust. And coming back to what we said earlier about everything is client focused. Yeah, that trust takes a lifetime to build and an instant to go. And so that's one of the big things that it's always in the back of our mind.
Yeah, and that's powerful not only for clients but also for team members as well.
Yes,
trust is one of the things that we've realized through the years, especially for a leadership team, but across the team. Mindset overall is that if you have trust that's built in, you can run faster. As in, if you share your feedback along the way, is it the truth or is it the stuff that people want to hear?
Mm-hmm.
And the only way people can share the truth is if there's trust there. They know they're not going to come down and hammer them.
Right?
And so that trust is really important for team members as well, along with clients. I think that's powerful. As well. So, okay. So you got 3 words.
Yeah.
How would somebody, maybe that's working with you or a client, how would they describe you in 3 different words?
3 different.
I know I'm going to get you to brag a little bit about yourself. Tell me what those 3 words would be.
I probably have to say funny, because it seems to make lots of people laugh.
Okay. Yeah.
Caring, I think that. I think that people that they know that when we sit down, and also I go out of their way that the kind of moments of truth with clients, also with friends and family, that always try to go out of my way to help them. I don't know. I guess I'd have to say that I guess techie, because God always seemed to have a gadget of some sort. That's when we built our house there a number of years ago, I turned my house into my gadget there. So stuff like that.
Good to have a guy like that in the office there to be able to drive the technology side of it. That's good. So funny, caring, and techie.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Excellent. Okay, last question. What advice would you give your, we'll say, younger self if you were to give one piece of advice?
Better time management. Even though I think that everyone, especially when you're working, you think you're good at time, but there's lots of wasted time. I mean, no one's ever going to be efficient. We're not going to be a Swiss clock, all the time. But, that I think a lot of times where, could I have, maybe paid somebody to do something for me instead of just saying, I'm doing this myself just because you had to do it yourself, or like to just that maybe you worked yourself too hard and then you got exhausted and you had to take like extra time right off. So it's kind of trying to find a balance in life sooner than instead of trying two extremes. But when you're starting up a business, sometimes you have to work those extra hours. My wife could attest to in the early years as we were building up our staff and that I'd be at the office some nights till like midnight helping our computer tech, doing stuff in the office while we were doing things. And that was, did I have to? No, but it's just like I wanted to make sure it got done properly, but also too that, when you get budgets in the beginning, well, that you don't never have budgets anymore, but that your budgets expand as your business expands, that you're just trying to help out and to get in there where you can type of thing. So yeah, it's just, finding balance earlier, I guess.
Yeah, better time management and focusing on the areas that drive, we'll say, better and higher results.
We're turning.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. Great advice. And one underlying there as well, you had mentioned your wife and that she was able to put up with that through those years of you working late. And that is like of untold importance as well that I found even in my life and with a lot of successful business owners is that having that supportive spouse to be able to back you up through those, right? That's it. Like, I don't know. Like for me, I know I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have her rooting for me and, able to put up with the late hours that we as entrepreneurs put in.
Yeah, right.
Well, Chuck, this was phenomenal. If anyone that's listening, if they want to reach out to you and find out more about your financial team and find out more about investing, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure. The best way would be our websites, burtonfinancial.com. We also have a Facebook page, facebook.com/Burton team. And also on X, Chuck_Burton. There.
Awesome. Well, Chuck, thank you so much. Very nice meeting you. That was great. Great interview. I want to welcome you guys back to the next episode that's going to be coming up where we speak to the most successful business owners on how they built their business and how to create wealth. We'll talk to you soon.